Hey, John.
Hi, Karen.
Welcome back.
What time is it?
It's now.
Right fucking now?
It's right fucking now.
Ta-da! We welcome our new sculpture, the most versatile sculpture of the most versatile word in the world. You ready to get into it?
Do you still have the dice up there that say fuck yeah?
Yes, and I will bring them down. And I'll give a shout out to my buddy Damien who sent me these awesome dice. So you can roll it, and one of the dice says fuck on every side, and the other one has all sorts of stuff like fuck it, fuck that, fuck. We discovered this could be no or fuck on. What else do we have? Fuck yeah, naturally. Fuck if I know. Proving the versatility of the word fuck and how it can be used every possible way.
Fuck on.
Fuck on.
Instead of party on, we have fuck on.
Oh, remember Wayne's World?
Wayne's World,
Party
yes.
on, Wayne.
Exactly.
Right?
Fuck on, Garth.
Yes, I love it.
So, speaking of on,
Yes.
tell me what you know about the word no.
I know there is, in terms of the universal language, no such thing as a no. Wow, that was the best lead-in ever.
That was I don't know, double, triple negative. No.
There is only yes. At least according to Abraham and Bashar and all these people I'm into, there is only, in terms of the mechanics of the universe, the law of attraction. There's no law of exclusion, no law of rejection, no law of resistance. It's kind of like that idea, whatever you look at, you call towards you.
Whatever you focus on expands.
Yes. Ooh, yes. Good Dr. Joe phrase, right?
Yeah.
I was listening to a guy, and I may have mentioned this in past episodes, who was talking about downhill glade skiers who go at like high rates of speeds competitively through trees while skiing. And he's like, you'd think they'd be like, I know there's trees over there, I know there's trees over there, don't go there, don't go there. And he's like, nope, if you talk to any of them, all they're thinking every second is where's the open path, where's the open path? And they're just looking for that clear-cut road, because whatever you go towards, you literally go towards.
Yeah, whatever you focus on, you're going to attract.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And as far as the subconscious mind goes, it doesn't hear any negative words.
That's right.
So again, if you say, I don't want to be hit by a car, you're telling your subconscious mind and the universe, I want to be hit by a car. So be careful about what you don't want, or any negative words at all, because the universe and your subconscious mind doesn't hear them.
I just had like a huge moment. So I was reading this awesome quote by Abraham, which says, worry is not love. And actually within the context of what we're talking about, it makes exact sense. When you're worrying about someone, you're actually increasing their probability of, worry implies fear. So you're actually drawing that fearful event as a probable future towards yourself and towards them. And therefore it makes perfect sense. Love wouldn't be worry, because worry would be the calling of what you don't prefer towards you. Because you're like, I hope they make the plane. I hope they make the plane. Well, maybe in that context.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I guess that's okay. You're like, I guess it'd be
I
like,
hope they don't
I hope they don't miss the
Yes.
plane. Don't miss the plane. You're putting out there, they're going to miss the plane. They're going to miss the plane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, you've learned it so well, it's unconscious already.
Yes.
It's hard to do it.
Yes.
Once you learn how to speak positively, it's hard to speak negatively.
Yeah. This starts to become like a real fun game on the daily, to slow life down, listen to what you're thinking, listen to what you're saying. And as we talked about in another episode, like, is this something I want to touch? But from the perspective of realizing everything I touch, like Midas, turns to gold. It pulls it towards me.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Totes. That's all you have on no?
There must be more.
You should say no to that.
No.
I have plenty more on no.
Plenty more. Where can we go? Where can we go from here?
Well, it's funny. I was talking to you earlier. I read this book called The Way of Mastery, and this phrase just hit me. I have been through this book so many times, and I was at the end again, and it was a little bit like bittersweet, like, oh, I'm at the end again. But then I get to start over, right? But this phrase really jumped out at me, and it's, what you have not yet embraced imprisons you. And I think that's so cool, because, talking about the word no, resisting something, especially some part of you, just makes it ever more present for you.
Yes.
Like you're going to attract it everywhere, seemingly outside of you, but really there's no such thing as outside of you. You're just attracting the mirror reflection of what's inside. So I think that's really beautiful.
Yes. Neville Goddard talks about there only really being two options, one being indifference, which I'm seeing is basically the same thing as allowance. You're just kind of like accepting, allowing, going with the flow, not amplifying. And then the opposite to indifference would be basically focus or anything you're doing, any awareness towards something at all. It's like a whole new frame of reference. And the idea a lot of us were like taught and sold in school, the idea of problem solving is paradoxically actually like sustaining the problem and actually amplifying the problem. And that's really strange, a really strange way to think, especially given the way a lot of like maybe charity organizations or like social organizations are structured. And Abraham talks on that, and it's fascinating when she realizes like there's a war on hunger that's been going on for how many years? Have you ever solved that? Like it's a valid element of creation. Like hunger is a valid state of being, just as satiation is. And as the sovereign God, all of us essentially are, we pick what we'd prefer to watch through the focus. So maybe like the idea of a process in solving or curing something could be like an exciting theme that someone would choose to explore in life, which is totally valid and cool. And I guess you'd recognize what you're doing. Like I'm excited to like learn to fly a plane is almost the same thing as like curing hunger. You're like, I'm gonna go at stages and kind of get there, but you realize you have to shift more focus onto the solution than onto the idea of there being a problem. This is interesting actually to talk out further too. So like if you were gonna work from a charitable perspective, you would place your awareness on being like everyone is well fed, for example, there's plenty of food for all, and like place time and emphasis on that rather than on there's not enough for everyone. We're never gonna be able to have enough. Yeah, that's really cool to see.
Even, Mother Teresa said, I will never go to an anti or a protest rally for anything. If you have a pro-peace rally, I'll be there. If you have an anti-war protest, count me out. Like, she knew.
I love that
Right?
quote.
Like,
that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, she totally knew. It's like that subtle flip. Anti-war is war, pro-peace is peace. Yes.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, very cool. So it's just a matter of noticing the language in your head and that you say out loud. At one point, I don't know if I told you this, but I started studying language and the effects that it has on people's physiology and on their results. And I started compiling this list of words that are disempowering and phrases, and then what you could replace them with. And all of a sudden, like I started giving it out as bonuses when I would do programs and stuff. And I've had people like, hey, do you have that list of the empowering language phrases? Like recently, I'm like, yeah, of course. So I just give it to people. But it's really cool. And we've talked about this concept before, like have to.
Yes.
Like I have to. When you have to do something, whether it's pay taxes or go to work or feed your children, whatever it is, just notice like what your body feels like when you have to do anything.
Yeah.
It's very heavy and it takes away your place of power, your choice. And simply replacing it with, I choose to. I choose to feed my children.
Yeah.
I choose to pay taxes. I choose to go to work. Or I get to.
I get to.
I get to.
Yeah.
Because it is a privilege. What a privilege it is to feed your children.
It's so fascinating to realize much of our understanding of reality is actually backwards. Again, all truths are true, but looking at it from a new perspective and realizing generally we go like external circumstance and then like track from that point, like I have to do this because previous external circumstance showed me I like need this or whatever. But you can flip it, like you're saying, I get to do this. Like before you even take the action and the circumstance even occurs, decide the frame and the lens through which you're going to choose to perceive what's going to happen, and then watch how your emotions and thoughts change as a result of defining it in advance. Abraham talks a bunch about sloppy thinking, and she's like, you can change your reality, but you can't do it being the sloppy thinkers you all are. You can't just look at everything that's happening around you with no discernment, no care, no self-reflection, just take it all in and accept it and change your reality. You got to get out ahead of it. And that's her main point in meditating, to like establish the state of being you prefer, the perspective you prefer before you even start the day. So you're picking out that lens that you're gonna observe all activities through. And it kind of becomes fun. She's mentioned it, like make it almost a game, and I do that. How like long into the day can I go holding that lens before like I start to slip and be like, whoops, I forgot, I'm creating my own reality. I'm back in victim mode, thinking thoughts of have to and this and that. So
yeah. It's really fascinating. Like once you decide to play the game, you'll start catching yourself all the time. Like, oh man, there I go, I have to. And you've probably heard like don't should all over yourself. It's the same thing. But what happens in the beginning is it's so uncomfortable because you're like, oh my gosh, I have to all the time. Like I'm a complete victim all the time. And what most people do is they start to beat themselves up. And then because they're beating themselves up and it's so uncomfortable and they make it mean something about themselves, like there's something wrong with me, I'm doing it wrong, like I'll never get it right, like all these stories, all this meaning that gets attached, people will give up and they'll just go back to being unconscious. But here's what I say is like every time you catch yourself, celebrate. Because it was going on before, you were just not conscious of it.
Yes.
And now you're catching it, and that's the only way you can shift it, is once you become aware that you're actually doing it. So instead of beating yourself up, you're like, yes, I caught it. I went unconscious. And just by bringing awareness to it, you're back to being conscious of it, which is the only place you can shift it. Yes. And I want to say one more thing before I move on, is when you have to do something for somebody else especially, think about the energy they feel, the frequency of being somebody's obligation. It sucks.
Yeah.
Even for your children, the fact that you have to feed them, it doesn't feel good for them. But what if you get to feed them and they get to be the recipients of that love, that unconditional love? It's completely different. So even practice with your kids, practice with your partners, your coworkers. I have to do this report. No, I get to do this report and I get paid really well to work here.
Yeah.
Like play with it and just see what it does for your own energy, for your own frequency. Because once you start playing in that realm, you are the fucking creator of everything. Yes. You are anyway. But what do you want to create? Like a situation where you're a victim or a situation where you're the fucking boss?
That's beautiful. Yeah, step number one, own it. Always being like, I'm creating this.
Yes.
Because you can't change what you don't own. And yeah, going back to your previous comment, I was hearing one of Bashar's quotes so loudly, which I love. And he goes, if at first you don't succeed, change the definition of success. So realize, like, I may not have gotten the outcome I wanted, but I was conscious the whole time and I changed my own internal thoughts and didn't beat up on myself. That's my new definition of success in this moment.
Yes.
Because it leverages that elevated emotion. And I've been sitting a lot in the last 2 weeks with emotions and realizing emotions never lie. Listening to tons of Abrahams being like, your emotional guidance system is your only instinct. That's all you really have to guide yourself. How you're doing and where you're going is based on how you feel. So realizing emotions never lie. And according to Bashar, in order for there to be an emotion, there has to be an underlying belief or thought. If there's no thought / belief, initially there can be no emotion. And he gives like a great example where he's like, say I call you, and he makes up some word that is not known in the English language or any language. Fajul, that might be an Italian word, I don't know. But he asked some lady, like, how do you feel when I say that to you? And she's like, I don't know, like, what does it mean? And he goes, exactly, when something has no definition or belief system or thought behind it, it's completely neutral.
Right.
So in states when I'm like locked into the vortex, as Abraham calls it, like I'm feeling great, it's really easy to see thoughts that don't feel good early on and then do her pivot technique where you realize like, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. And then you're like, then you feel the emotional feedback. Your inner being's like, that thought is not a direction you want to go. And then just being able to pivot to be like, I could play the what if game. Like, what if everything goes exactly as I do prefer it to go? It just seems like the more momentum you have in a non-preferred direction, the harder and harder it becomes to pivot.
Yes.
So getting out ahead of it with morning meditation and setting the intention and and just deciding. I've been approaching every day, like, I just fucking decide today, like, I'm gonna stay conscious the whole time. I'm not gonna stay unconscious. I'm gonna stay conscious. Speaking of no, I'm gonna be aware. I'm gonna be my best self. And kind of like what you were saying before, sometimes you realize like life is just happening. Like it's gonna happen. So if you need to work, you need to like feed people, again, you get to, it's gonna happen anyway. So you might as well choose a positive perspective on it, which is like my ultimate fallback is like, it's just gonna happen. So I might as well be the best self I can be. It's happening anyway.
So true.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then everybody is going to feel so much better. And then you create opportunities to laugh and dance and have fun.
Yes. You had a dance party this week, didn't you?
I did. It wasn't technically a dance opportunity, but there was a DJ and a bunch of people standing around talking. So I said, close to the end of the evening, I'm like, are you going to play something we could dance to? And then John's wife gave the DJ some suggestions, and we danced it out.
Any particular songs that were best?
I don't remember, but I don't know. Your wife would know. We had a blast, and maybe 6 of us stayed after, and we just danced, and we had a blast.
Yeah. Dancing is a good idea of distraction where sometimes you can't pivot because you have too much momentum going. I've been playing with different distraction techniques, and dancing can be a good one. Coloring. Distraction
in a positive direction? Distraction from something you don't prefer?
Yeah, or maybe even just distraction from that momentum if it's going too much. Just finding some other way to focus on anything to get your mind off it. Even if, again, if you try and like pivot too hard, you're like resisting the state of being you're in. You're saying no to it. You're like only getting yourself like quicksand or like a Chinese finger trap, like stuck deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And I realize that in myself. I'll go, shit, I'm in a state I don't want to be. Time to get out of it. But if you're like in it and you're like, I'm getting out of it, you just, again, resist it and like get yourself deeper and deeper.
Do you ever play with like going into it and just seeing what's in there for you?
I have. And it seems like you have a...
Well, I'm just thinking about, pivoting is one thing, but sometimes the emotions are there to be discovered. And sometimes a pivot can be resistance. Like, for example, I used to be clinically depressed. And prior to that, I had a lot of suicidal thoughts. And when I became clinically depressed, when I had children, I was so afraid of sadness because I was afraid that if I felt any sadness, I would automatically go to those suicidal thoughts. And then automatically, my kids have no mom. And if you've ever experienced depression at all, it can be that fast.
Yeah.
It could be like less than a thought. You're like, go from sadness to dead. And it makes no sense unless you've been in it. So I remember listening to Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun, I guess they call them. And she was talking about leaning into those uncomfortable feelings and just being with them.
Yeah.
And for me, it was really, really powerful because, there was a time I went through a breakup and I was in Costco and I'm like, oh, okay, I feel sad. And instead of like distracting myself, I just leaned in. I'm like, okay, well, I feel sad. My eyes want to cry. So I just am crying, going through Costco. And, I'm just like it was nothing. I had like a neutral relationship with these tears and with this experience of sadness.
Yeah.
And I think it was less than a minute later, and I was like, it was gone. Like the sadness had passed and had been replaced with something else.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all these years I'd been resisting that sadness, thinking it would kill me. And all it took was a little love, a little acceptance of it, a little almost neutral. It was neutral, I would say.
Yeah.
I wasn't resisting it. I wasn't making it wrong. I wasn't making it less than or worse than happiness. It was just, this is what's here for me right now in this moment.
Yeah.
And in accepting it fully, I was able to embody happiness and joy, and it didn't take any effort.
Yeah.
Like pivoting sounds effortful.
Yeah, it can. Yeah, you're making such a beautiful point, and it's such a perfect element within our conversation of there being no such thing as no, because if you're already in the emotion, if you're like, I don't like this, I'm going to change it, you're like, I don't like this is I like this.
Yeah,
is making it stick more. So going into it's really cool in being like, I'm not afraid to sit with you because
I'm not.
Oh, I'm willing and excited to sit with you
You're welcome.
to allow it, and that allows
Yeah.
the energy to dissipate. Yeah, that's really cool.
And sometimes, if it stays longer than a few minutes, I'll be like, what are you here to show me? What is it that I'm ready to heal? What have I been believing that's not serving me any longer?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's ready, it's like an old belief that's ready to come out. And if I keep pivoting, it's staying in there and it's going to get louder.
Yeah.
We know how that goes.
Yes. Yeah, this game really seems to be one of self-discovery, of finding what's actually rattling around in your head, and then like letting it go, in the sense of no longer giving it any attention, kind of starving it out, or finding the new thought or path, allowing it. It's kind of it's really a dance. There's a whole set of tools you can use depending on where you're at. It's really like a dance with all the thoughts and emotions and where you're at, and
Yeah.
whether you can pivot or allow it, sit with it, or get out ahead of it.
Yeah, but sometimes it's just shining a light. Like, I've talked about this before. I don't know if it was here, but I used to have a big fear of being on the telephone with like cold calls when I was in sales. And it came from childhood, in me reading people's faces and changing what I was saying, watching their faces. Am I safe if I say this? And on the phone, I couldn't do that. Now, does it make any sense at all to your adult logical mind that somebody could physically harm me over the telephone?
Yeah, of course not.
No. But so sometimes it's these little beliefs like that we attach meaning to them at a very young age when our minds aren't formed.
Yeah.
And we carry those meanings into adulthood without examination because they've always been there and they're, under our level of awareness. So sometimes these emotions can be indicators of some belief, like you were saying, that doesn't serve us anymore. And it's time to shine a light on it and say, does this really even make any sense? Does it make sense that somebody could hurt you over the telephone physically? Like, no. So is it safe to be yourself over the phone? Well, yeah. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Someone could hang up. Yeah. And they can't even slam it anymore.
Boom, that's right. Boop. Wow. Yeah. I love your mention of facial expressions and starting to change your course of expression based on how you're defining that facial expression. It seems hard to be like, can I actually redefine a certain facial expression? Potentially, or could I potentially decide I'm going to be brave and continue to speak my truth despite someone's facial expression? But that's interesting. And it was making me start to think about autism and some of these other, I don't even know what the term is. I don't really know anything about it, but people who are kind of established in who they are and what their truth is and indifferent to other people's perspective, and actually recognizing, whoa, that's a superpower potentially.
Yeah.
Like someone's like, I'm excited to do whatever. And a lot of people I've noticed with autism have this incredible ability to focus on details in such a beautiful way and make these masterful creations. And then it seems like a lot of the schooling or things is to teach them to be like, no, stop focusing on what you're good at and want to focus on me, and realize like, if I'm angry or upset, you can't keep doing what you're doing. You need to like respond to my state of being. And again, all truths are true. It's just interesting to recognize that.
And if you study that very long, not just autism, but facial expressions, like resting bitch face, for example.
Yes.
We were talking about that
Yes.
at our meditation. We'll get there. But resting bitch face happens to analytical people that are thinking. It has nothing to do with their mood. They're using their brains almost all the time. Yet if we grew up with a critical parent, we might see that face of the critical parent in these other people that are just thinking. They're using their gifts to analyze and, look at data.
That's masterful reframing right there.
It's actually true. I mean, the studies show that.
Yeah. Wow. You just allowed me to redefine certain facial expressions.
Yeah.
I can say, oh, they're just thinking. I do that too sometimes. I'll be talking to someone and then I realize it's more comfortable and I can have more thoughts flow when I'm like gazing off in the distance. And then I realized a few people were like, I don't think he's paying attention, but I'm actually paying more attention to what I'm saying.
I had a conversation with a woman today about sex, and she was talking about how, she and her partner will gaze deeply into each other's eyes, and it's so intimate. She's like, but when I want to have an orgasm, it feels better to close my eyes. And I'm like, and what do you make that mean? Like that you're not intimately connected? It's like, for me, it's just like, you can make it mean whatever you want. Your partner can make it mean whatever he wants.
Yes.
You could have a discussion about it.
Yes.
You could say, I feel more deeply with my eyes closed.
Yes.
And I want to feel it deeply, not up here, but all the places.
Boom.
So we came up with this acronym at our meditation. Resting Joy Face, RJF.
RJF. It's a thing. It's a thing now. I didn't Google it. I wonder if anyone's thought of that
I don't know.
yet.
Well, they have now.
It could be a new thing.
Yes.
Yes.
Where you're just happy for no reason.
Yeah.
So you were the one talking about it. You want to explore that more?
Yeah, sure. The idea of, and Joe speaks about it, you continually practice the state of being, installing the software until it becomes a hardware program and just starts to run on its own. So you start every day with an hour of meditation where you're focusing on things you prefer, raising your emotions to match that, and then you just go out into the world because you spend an hour, for me, licking ice cream cones and petting puppy dogs and sitting on beaches and feeling awesome, and you just walk out into the world smiling, and people will be like, why are you smiling? And it's interesting that that's a valid question. If you're like in resting bitch face, people just let it be, but if you're in a happy state of being, people often ask like, why are you happy? And then you need to have an answer to respond to it. And it could just be because I've been practicing that and then practicing it over and over again until you just wind up in resting joy face, right?
That's awesome. So I have another Walgreens story. I know this is funny. It seems like I spend every waking moment there, but I was in Walgreens yesterday with my daughter and they have music playing. And so my daughter starts dancing and she was dancing like silly. She was like doing this or something. And this guy walks up behind us and he's laughing and he starts dancing. And then a guy at the counter turns around, sees this guy dancing, my daughter dancing, me dancing, and he starts dancing. I mean, these are adult men in Walgreens. And I'm like, I said, Sabina, my daughter, I'm like, look at the joy you just spread. Like you have elevated their moods.
Yes.
Who knows what was going on for them, and you made them happy just by being like not giving a crap what anybody thinks, and by being yourself, your authentically joyful self.
Yeah.
And so we had a really good conversation about that.
Yeah.
And it's, being willing to just to be happy and playful and express your joy, whatever it looks like.
Fearlessly happy.
It was the coolest thing. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I never would have expected like two men in their like 40s, 50s, like on a Monday night.
Yeah.
Dancing at the Walgreens pharmacy.
I love it. It's the idea that any focus can become contagious. And just like a virus, which is normally in like a negative or illness connotation, is equally valid as a joyful or happy connotation, and it can spread the exact same way if everyone chooses to embrace it. Just
like at a Dr. Joe retreat with 1,500, 2,000 people, and one person starts laughing.
Yes.
Yes. And then it spreads and you can hear it. It's almost like the wave at a stadium. It's like, ah, ah. And so it just it goes throughout the whole ballroom. Yeah. And it is so contagious. And then hearing the way some people laugh is just hilarious. That makes me laugh.
Yes.
And I'm one of those people. I have really funny, weird laughs.
There was some episode, it was in my Instagram feeds. I want to say it was like Ricky Lake from many, many years ago, but she had tons of people who had weird laughs on the show. So one person with a weird laugh would start laughing and then all the others would go off and then everyone would be laughing at everyone else's weird laugh. And it was just endless laughter. Probably half the show is just everyone looking at each other and laughing.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's nothing better. That feels so good. That happened at one of our meditations. I started laughing.
Yes.
And it felt wildly inappropriate, and yet I didn't care.
Yes.
I'm like, I don't care.
I love that.
It's spreading joy. And I'm not here to censor myself. I'm not here to hold back. I spent many years doing that. Done.
That's why we love you, Mayor Karen.
Aww. Sounded like you said Mary Karen.
Mayor Karen.
Mayor.
Mayor.
Yes.
Mayor. Mayor. Because she knows everyone. That's why she's the mayor. All the babies love her.
Oh, I kiss all the babies.
She does.
And all the adults.
Yes.
Well, I don't kiss them. I hug them.
The heart hugs.
I heart to heart them.
Karen has shown us all the heart-to-heart hugs.
And they try to bang me in the face because I always go the wrong direction. Or they do. I mean, is there really a wrong direction?
You can't run from Karen with hugs. She will
I'm like,
hug
bring
you
it,
down.
bring it in, bring it. Like a baby with my hands.
Beautiful.
Yes.
You feeling good?
I'm feeling great, John. How are you?
Wonderful.
What's our fuck pose?
I think we need to get close enough to get this centered. Is this it? Just facial expression? Right there. I like how you pointed when you're listening on Apple Podcasts that you can't see what we're doing. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, maybe you want to check us out on YouTube, which we're also on now, so you can see our little antics.
You can see what's behind us.
Yes.
You can see, like, the elephant in the room, which in this case is a giant sculpture of the word fuck.
Oh, that's right.
Because they don't know.
Yeah, they don't know. We
They
didn't
don't know
highlight
we've been
that.
sitting in front of fuck this whole time.
That's right. And
What
actually,
the fuck have we been doing, John?
what the fuck? Apple Podcasts requires the little photo of the episode to be a perfect square. So that's why we always have to like do this lean in jig. Yeah. But then we're covering our fuck sign. So yeah. Anywho.
Yes.
All right.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Peace.